Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this live stream, which will be a replay if you're not with us live right now, about the best ways to study and memorize. I see Matthew is here. What's up, Matthew? Funny you're talking about studying today because I'm in the middle of studying for finals, says Matthew. Well, thanks for letting us know about that, and good timing. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, and confirm that you can hear me. Let me know how things are going with your own studies and whatnot. We're going to have a great session today. Always wonderful to hang out and see you all. And the more active you make it, the better. And if you're watching the replay, you can also just use the discussion down below to type out a bunch of stuff if you want some feedback later. And as always, thumbs up and let's go. So, best ways to study and memorize. I get questions about this all the time, and we want to think about what is study anyway, right? To to get the ball rolling. Well, studying is actually the practice of getting information into your memory, right? It's the practice of getting information into your memory so that it can then be practiced in use. So studying never ends. The actual use of the information that's in your head is also study, right? Because you're paying attention to what it is that you are saying as you are saying it, or what it is that you're writing as you write it. And so you're then actually refreshing your memory of that content, because we know that when we access memorized information, we actually change its chemical location in the brain, and we change the nature of how it's encoded in the brain by compounding that information and so forth. So we're essentially studying our own mental content when we are putting our mental content out into the world. So that's very, very exciting. Maricella is here in Texas. Thanks for saying hello, Maricella. Always good to see Masterclass members here and Mastermind members in this particular case. And really appreciate that music that you put out not too long ago. And thank you for contributing to our group and for being a person who studies consistently. And so that's another thing, that study is something that is only happening if it's done consistently, right? And you can study all that you want, but that doesn't mean that you're actually memorizing any of the information. And so one of the big things to understand is that just simply inputting information is not necessarily getting it into memory. In fact, input can cause barriers to memorization if that input is done in ways that overwhelm you, bore you, are not effective, that aren't fun. And we got to be careful about that, because action is not necessarily accomplishment. And we always want to focus on the actions that create accomplishments. And one of the beautiful things is that we can study in ways that actually require minimum amounts of effort and get a maximum output, rather than maximum effort with minimum output, which is usually what students do. I saw this over years when I did my BA. I saw it over years when I did my MA and my second MA, and I saw it over years when I did my PhD and ultimately was teaching other students. And then later, after I had my PhD, while I was teaching other students, I just saw them really focusing on maximum activity leading to minimal accomplishment, when you could actually do minimum activity with maximum accomplishment. And it's really beautiful how that works when you're studying. And you really do want to bring the Thor of Hammer to the task. Bam! Because he does a lot with just swinging that one hammer. You know, he doesn't need 5,000 hammers. He just needs the one. And he swings it correctly and gets it done. So that's one of our guiding principles that we're going to want to hang on to here. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world. We have a couple of chats here ready to go. The more active you are, the better. Believe it or not, it opens up the chemicals in your brain that makes you more receptive to learning. And that's a very important thing. I've got a whole stack of books here that I want to share with you as resources that I think will help you. And let's start with those big levers, the memory palace being one of the biggest of all. So if you don't yet know how to use a memory palace, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, and that's going to help you a lot figure this out. I'm going to put a link in the chat for you so that you can check that out if you don't want to type in magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. But it's really, really important that you make sure that you have this foundational, fundamental skill to enable yourself to have the techniques at hand. So go ahead, click that link, get registered for the free course, and it'll help you out in a big way. College Success is here. Wow, perfect timing for someone named College Success from Plymouth. Thank you for saying hello. And Matthew asks, is Thor my favorite Avenger? You know, I'm a bit of a lone wolf. I'm not sure that any of the Avengers are my favorite Avengers, but I am looking forward to Endgame, and there's a lot of life lessons in the Avengers stories. But I can't say that the instant they join a group together, I don't know. But in any case, the last one was very, very interesting because it takes it to an appropriately metaphorical level given the times. So I really enjoyed that. Now, why a memory palace? Why is there such an emphasis on this being the foundational technique? Largely, it has to do with the fact that it is the easiest way to scale mnemonics, and it's the easiest way to use several mnemonics at the same time and have them all bound up with your brain's biggest free resource, which is spatial mapping, your spatial memory. And so there's a little bit of a learning curve that we've reduced to the least amount of effort necessary, and that's in the free course in the link that you can click there, and or type in magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. And what you're going to discover when you do this is you're going to unlock your spatial memory, and as you unlock your spatial memory, you're going to unlock autobiographical memory, you're going to unlock figural memory, you're going to unlock episodic memory, and so on and so on. There's multiple levels of memory that we can peer into the dark depths of the scientific terminology. But the more you're able to weave all of these things together simultaneously, the more you'll be able to create rapid associations while you're reading, while you're taking notes, and while you're reviewing. You'll have greater ease decoding that collaboration of multiple levels of memory in ways that get the information into long-term memory and essentially make it part of the chemical structure of your brain. It's very, very exciting. And to do it correctly is the most exciting thing in the world. So Physico is here. Hello, Physico. Thanks for saying hello. If you are joining us and you haven't said hello yet, go ahead and pound it into the chat. Now is your opportunity. Let me know where you are in the world if you have any questions, and get that free course if you haven't already. Because ultimately, your memory palace will be the place that supports the magnetic imagery you create. Memory techniques are all about association. You take information that you don't know and you associate it with information that's already in your brain. So all the memory palaces you will use, they're already in your brain. All the magnetic imagery you will create is already in your brain. One of the things that people struggle with is that they try to start from scratch. That's not what memory techniques are about. Memory techniques are about exploring and strengthening what's already in your memory. And so there are exercises to help you do that. There are processes, there are steps. And then when you get to recall rehearsal, this is why it's so easy to get the information into long-term memory, because you're not stretching, you're not struggling. You're just based on what's already in your memory. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. So we've got College Success saying hello. Hello, College Success. History of Philosophy says, hey, Anthony, I'm a law student, so I must memorize a lot. Do you think it's good to use flashcards? We're going to talk about flashcards coming up in just a bit. Thank you for that question, and love your name there. That's great. Chitra is here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Wow, great. That's wonderful, Chitra. Thanks for saying hello. But yeah, we're definitely going to get to the role of index cards here in a minute. But I want you to understand these fundamentals and understand why that they're necessary. You want to reduce cognitive load, and you want to always be working on material that's already in your memory as the basis of association. Think of it this way. A painter sets up a canvas and then paints with colors that are in the painter's kit, right? They don't want to have to invent colors from scratch. They want to have them already in the tube, ready to put out on their palette there, and then they start painting. If they have to go and make the colors from scratch, which back in the day painters used to have to do, right? Like if you see some of these old movies, they are going to sometimes you'll see these scenes where they're making their own paint and so forth. We don't have to do that when it comes to memory techniques. We've already got lots of paint in our minds. So that's the point here, because a lot of people get into memory techniques and they're stretching and they're reaching and they're memorizing stuff to have memory tools. You do not have to memorize to use your memory with the memory tools. You should at least start with what you've already got in your mind. Now, if you think that this is somehow misguided advice, it isn't. And in fact, let me grab this book here. Woo, excuse my reach. Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson talks all about this. It's called Nestic Memory. Check out page 77, at least in this edition. And he talks about how important it is to work on your existing levels of competence in order to reach goals. So I've been teaching this for years. I was really, really excited to read him basically teaching the same thing in Maps of Meaning. And that's how you get somewhere. That's how anybody gets somewhere, is you work on your existing levels of competence, your existing levels of what is in your memory. And Historia y Filosofia says, it's really hard for me to create memory palaces. I struggle with it. I just can't put these abstract concepts into concrete images and put them in a palace. Great. Well, thank you for that. And we'll can help you with that. Number one principle, keep making memory palaces and keep working on this. Number two principle, you don't have to place them anywhere. You create them there. It's not about somehow taking imagery and then moving it on over into a memory palace. You create it in the memory palace. And also, chances are that you might need to take the course. If you haven't taken it at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, then you should, and maybe you need to take it again, or you need to go through the masterclass again, or if you're in the mastermind, go through some of the mastermind materials, because if you're struggling with that, then you may not have properly understood what this game is all about, and so a little bit of review may be in order, and we'll talk about the importance of review on today's session. Chitra says, how do you create memory palaces for a language that changes its meaning according to context, sometimes drastically? Let me know which language is so drastic, and let's get some concrete references on the table. We try to avoid working with abstractions, but great question, Chitra. And the answer is probably pretty clear, but let's talk about what language is so drastically changing itself. Eris Cosmos says, what if you don't have much in your memory? Well, what age are you, and why would you not have much in your memory? Some of the exercises that we talk about, and incidentally, we have last week on the podcast, let me share the link with you, a bunch of brain exercises that will help you in this regard. But you really want to start looking at the existing levels of material that you do have in your memory, rather than thinking about what you don't have in your memory, and work with what you got. So chances are you have a wide range of friends. Chances are you have a wide range of family members. Chances are you have a wide range of interests in comics, movies, TV programs, etc., etc., etc. And there's a link there to the latest blog post on memory exercises. Please, everybody, check it out. Listen to the podcast version. The podcast version is always different and supplemented than the reading version, and the reading version is always different and supplemented in different ways than the podcast version. And those will give you some exercises that are going to help you really, really make sure that you don't have anything existing in your memory. But chances are that you do. Now, let's say that you don't have piles and piles of existing memory palaces in your mind because you have a bunch of family members and friends, and you have cafes and restaurants and museums and movie theaters all around the world. Let's just say that that's true of you. Well, then what you do is you go and you find out where the museum is, and you go to the museum. You find out where the art galleries are, and you go to the art galleries. On the way, you stop at cafes, you stop at restaurants, you look in the door. Heck, you go to the watch store, you look in the door. You go all over the place, and then all of a sudden, you have a bunch of places in your memory. Then you go to the library, you look at a bunch of comic books, you read some novels, and now you have that stuff in your memory. Go to the library, grab armfuls of DVDs, and then you go and you start watching those movies. Then you start to have characters. You can use the memory techniques to memorize the names of the characters. There's just simply no excuses. for not using the future as the way that you start to create lots and lots of memories. You say that you are 26, not very many friends, not much family, but you watch a lot of YouTube videos. Maybe you can use those. Maybe. It depends on what the YouTube videos are. Like if you're watching Vsauce, he's a pretty memorable guy, and he introduces you to all kinds of amazing facts and whatnot. So follow up on those facts. We'll actually talk about that in this session a little bit, that in a way that will help you. But the reality is that if you really do have an empty memory and you don't have enough of these tools, you have an extraordinary, wonderful adventure in front of you. Just start piling it in. Take a spoon or a bucket. The ocean of information doesn't care. You can take as much as you want, and you can memorize all along the way, and you build the tools as you go along. So Chitra is talking about Sanskrit. Excellent. Well, I'm learning some Sanskrit now, or at least memorizing Sanskrit phrases. And so meaning changing according to context. Like, for example, I have a lot of little things that change while that I'm memorizing. So it'll be like maha or mana changing a lot. There's a number of things between like itiriate and uchayate and so forth. So basically all you do is you treat it as a word by word, context by context basis, and then you memorize it. Then you use the big five of learning, which we'll talk about, in order to get that there. But in my studies of Sanskrit so far, I would not use that word that you used. It doesn't change drastically. It changes the way it changes. And I make a big deal out of this, because when we use words like drastically, we are making a monster that doesn't have to be there. It's just Sanskrit. You don't need to give it some special property of drastic monstrosity. It doesn't have it. So please don't do that. So as a specific case, in Sanskrit, the word Dattu in grammar means root of the word. Then in Ayurveda, it means quality. Great. So memorize those two different options. If you have a working Memory Palace strategy, this will not be an issue. But the number one thing is not to start calling it drastic or any dramatic words like this. You're just stacking the chips against yourself. It's just information. Don't exaggerate it or give it some special property of power over your mind. Okay, Eris Cosmos says, how long does it take to get this technique down? Well, most people find that they're able to, within 2 to 5 hours, have a fully functioning Memory Palace network. So dive in and get it done. There's no reason to delay. And there's something called the speed of implementation rule. It has served me well in my life many, many times. How the speed of implementation rule works is like this. You hear about something great, and then you get it right away. And then, as soon as you get it, you start to use it right away, because every hour that goes by reduces the likelihood that you'll ever take action. So I just mentioned maps of meaning. Those who are alive and attuned and said, wow, this has some secrets about how my memory works, they've already got it. They've already ordered it, or they are looking it up on their library website or whatever, and that's the speed of implementation. So I'm inviting you to go to magneticmarymethod.com/YT, take that free course. If you learn anything about the speed of implementation rule, then you will already be registering for it right now if you haven't already, and you will be starting the process of taking it, downloading the PDFs that come with it, and setting time on your calendar to go through it so that you can get these skills. But 2 to 5 hours, you should have a fully vibrant, well-functioning Memory Palace network, and then from there, things just get better and better and better. So Chitra agrees with a sure. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Right. So we want to have all of these as our fundamental tools as the best way to study and memorize. Memory Palace, proper, well-functioning magnetic imagery that is based on stuff that's already in our mind. If we don't have enough stuff in our mind, we go out and get it. We don't hum and haw about it. We don't delay. We just open our minds and attune ourselves to the power of information that just flows in freely. Watching movies, watching whatever it is, reading novels and so forth, and understand that it all compounds. Because if you are, like our good friend Edgar the Elephant here, we are rocking and rolling. We are going to get it done because we are on the long walk to knowledge. And we're not going to let the evil Dr. Forget, we're not going to let the evil Dr. Forget freeze ourselves in inaction. We're going to use the speed of implementation rule to get it done, All right, so with that covered, let's rock and roll. And the thing that we need to really do is go deep. If we're going to use memory techniques to help us learn, then we're going to have a wonderful, wonderful period of time with the memory techniques because we actually have turned them into a skill. So if you want to be like a boxer, you're not going to enter the ring without going deep into boxing, right? Because you'll get knocked out pretty fast. So go deep. What that means is define the memory techniques that you're going to use and really define your ability with them by practice. Then we're going to establish how that these memory techniques are going to be applied to the knowledge, and then we're going to exercise with the actual knowledge, and then we're going to practice this as part of our daily lives. And we're just going to take it one sip at a time, which means to keep on studying the techniques, keep on implementing the techniques, and keep on practicing them with the information that improves our life. So one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you're actually studying information that you want to have in your memory, because nothing gets the evil Dr. Forget against you faster than studying information that you don't want. Isn't that right? Yes, that's exactly how I get them every time. They trick themselves into memorizing information they don't actually want in their memory. And then it's so easy for me to take over their minds and freeze them. So you want to totally be sure that what you're memorizing you actually want, because if you don't, you're just stacking the chips against yourself. And this goes back to Chitra's thing about the drastic changes in memory techniques. That's the kind of language that just gives the evil Dr. Forget his power. He just freezes your mind with that drastic, ooh, it's so hard. He loves that stuff, and he will get you. But you got to be in it for the long walk. Edgar's here to help. I'm here to help. So what you want to do is make sure you go deep. Define these techniques. Define the information that you're studying. And then establish an actual practice. Establish a schedule. Put it on the calendar when you're going to study, when you're going to prepare your Memory Palace network, how you're going to arrange the information, and then do some exercises around it. Actually use the information that you need to study as your exercise so that you hit the ground running. And then make sure that you practice continually for life. All right, so Fury 6 says, how many languages do you speak? Right now, I am only speaking Chinese, a little bit of German from time to time. I don't know that I speak English particularly well, but I give it a try, and I am working on Sanskrit. So that's my palette at the moment. But even then, German, I don't get a chance to speak enough. Physico says, as a math student, I love discovering new things, but it's very boring just answering raw and dry questions. I understand things, but I don't like to just hammer the question down. I don't know what you mean by hammering the questions down, but keep using that word boring because you'll hypnotize yourself into forgetting. There's no such thing as boring information. Just change your language. Change the way that you think about stuff. There's no raw and dry questions. There's just your preparedness to answer the questions. Your coffee sucks is here. Michael says, I'd say your English is pretty great. Well, see, I make jokes about it because fluency is such a ridiculous concept that people throw around, and there's no such thing. None of us are fluent in our mother tongues. So really, the question is, were you able to communicate and accomplish a goal in your acts of communication? And if so, then that's what you needed. And if not, then you didn't. And so one of the things that's probably coming out in 2019 is more about the memory tradition and its earlier ties that we've lost a lot to communication, effective communication, which I would say is not about fluency as such in terms of language learning, but it is fluency in terms of expression of ideas to accomplish goals. That's what we want. That's what we need. And anything further than that is just madness. So let's go to the big five. So one of the things that students really, really don't do enough of, if they are doing it at all, that would really help them study and memorize a lot better, is to have the big five going. So just sitting here with a massive book is not enough. You've got to read around the book, actually read the text. Read the text in a particular way that we'll talk about in a minute. But you want to read it, but then you want to read around it. So there's a number of ways to do that we'll talk about. But essentially, be prepared to read more than the actual book. Then you want to speak about it with other people and also with yourself. So speak in the shower, sing songs to yourself. It sounds crazy, but it actually works. But also speak with others, like in discussion groups, and make sure that you are hearing other people's understanding or lack of understanding, which will help you mentally process your own understanding, formulate it in different ways, where you have agreements, where you have disagreements, where you see that your understanding is actually dead on, or where it's being challenged, or where that it's obviously got big holes in it that need to be filled. So that's really, really important. And then you want to be writing, and we'll talk a little bit more about some ways that you can use writing to help you study and memorize faster and with greater depth and retention of the information. And you want to do this all with a constant diet of listening as much as you can. So, Eris, I think it was here in our chat, said that he can use a lot of YouTube videos, he or she, and that's great. You can listen to a lot of podcasts. There's lots of recorded lectures to supplement this, but at the end of the day, also making sure that you're listening from the basis of having read is really, really important, and so that you're connecting and having the information outside of your mind in your own words through writing. This is really, really important. Physical says, the questions are very repetitive and don't make me think that much. Just use the procedural memory. That is boring. I want a challenge that are not as hard as hell and make me think in new ways. So thanks for that, Physical. It sounds contradictory, though. You want something that is not hard as hell and makes you think in new ways. Maybe thinking in new ways is going to be hard as hell. Who knows? But it sounds like maybe you're not studying the right topics. If it's not making you think as much as you would like to think, maybe you need to explore different topics or different ways of studying those topics, or you might need to get a mentor. That's what discussion groups are about as well. They're like free mentors who you can meet with, who push you in new directions, and ideally they will be people from a variety of interests and backgrounds who will challenge you, but heaven forbid that it would be easy, the challenges that they pose. That you want them to really give you rigorous, robust challenges. You don't want them to agree. So I'm in a discussion group. They don't agree with me at all. In fact, I'm like an army of one with what I think is the most rational response to a particular topic right now. And not only do they not agree with this, but they give me all kinds of things to watch and read and consider to bring me over to their side. I'm not going to go to their side for reasons that we don't need to get into, but maybe they will win me over. But it is challenging and a great thing to do. So Michael offers to Physico. I'm not sure what level of mathematics you're in, but when you get into higher levels, word problems are far less repetitive and more brain churning. If I were you, I'd seek out word problems. That could be interesting. Eris Cosmos asked me, is it political? Yes, well, there is a political edge to one of the discussion groups that I belong to. We can perhaps get into it on a different live stream. But basically, this is really important, is that if you really want to study and memorize more, you've got to be processing through multiple channels. And you need the benefit of other humans. And so there are discussion groups online, which are okay, but you're going to run into the digital amnesia issue, and you're not going to unlock some of the brain chemicals that are unlocked when you're with other people. So you need to seek out other people. Now, this is a real challenge. There's no getting around the fact that it's a challenge, but we know that Physico wants to be challenged. So one of the things that you might have to do, and there's great heroism in it that will create an actual biological change in you, is just start your own group. Start your own group and seek out the people that you want to be around. And so there's ways to do that. Meetup.com, for example. And you could use your existing social media platforms to let people know about what you're doing and just post dates and locations on your campus, for example, if you're a university student, or a cafe or a restaurant or anything of this nature, and gather people around to discuss who will help you make sure that you're doing the speaking and listening. And then if you have an online basis like a Facebook group or a forum or whatever you do, which a meetup page can also provide a way of having the written component, you can write to each other and read from each other. So you can get the reading, writing, listening, and speaking all in a discussion group that has an online component. But definitely do all that you can to go out and meet people. And, it's not always that possible, especially when it's like monthly and then, something happens or whatever. But there's something really, really important about getting other humans in your brain chemistry and activating that brain chemistry that has a long-lasting impact. So if you are struggling to remember stuff, it may be that one of the reasons why is that we are so encouraged now to do everything online rather than with some sort of hybrid of being online and being together. So that's really important. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, either in the live chat on the live stream, or if you're watching the replay in the discussion post area. Look forward to meeting you there, and let me know what ways that you have been studying and how that's working for your memory when you do. Now, we got this question about how to study for long hours. And so the first answer to that is don't study for long hours. It's not necessary. But at the same time, I like to study for long hours. I plan my breaks so that there's a sufficient amount of rest and switching between topics to leave one field fallow while going on to the next. And it's really, really important that even if you're studying for long hours, that you are leaving sufficient amounts of time for processing. So sitting in a chair really, really matters. Sitting in a chair really, really matters. And just sitting there just to sit and to think. And when you have planned your study sessions, plan the break for reflection. Plan reflection time. It doesn't have to be sitting in a chair. It can also be walking. And I mean walking on a digital fast. So digital fasting means no device, no MP3, no anything, just you and no deviations. So if you're on campus, you can lock up your stuff in a locker. When I was on university campus, this wasn't really an issue because we didn't have the internet 24/7 in the ways that we do now. We had little phones with that snake game that you would play, and Blackberries hadn't even emerged yet. But I would still leave it in my office. So I was very fortunate that I was the English Undergraduate Student Association president and had an office when I was in my BA, and then I just sort of always had an office. I don't remember a period ever since then when I didn't have an office. Or access to one on the campus. So I always had a place to leave my stuff, but just walking around without any interruptions. No Nokia phone, no Blueberry, no iPhone later, just walking around and reflecting directly from memory and really thinking on a chapter by chapter basis. And if you do some of the things that I suggest, you will be able to go through things on a chapter by chapter basis because you're able to actually segment the information that way in your mind. So plan the breaks and plan breaks for reflection. Reflection is so important. And it can be structured. It can be structured. You can literally plan 5 minutes to reflect on chapter 1. All right. So Chitra says, is it better to create memory palaces by alphabet or by topic or by, say, prefix, root of the word, etc.? I do a perfect approach almost always entirely by alphabet. But by topic, I don't know what you mean, but when I'm memorizing passages from the Ribhu Gita right now, so the Memory Palace is just by topic, I guess. It's by Ribhu Gita. And if you're in the mastermind and you haven't seen the November 2018 video yet, we talk about the MMMV cube and how that you can actually use the same Memory Palace for 2, if not 3 texts at the same time. So I got the Ribhu Gita in there. I've got some of the Upadesa Saram, and started a third topic with the Atmabodha. So that's something that is sort of by topic rather than alphabetical, but you could easily do it alphabetical as well. So the alphabetical system has many benefits across the board, especially for raw vocabulary, for using authors as bridging figures, etc. But I think that you've got to, Chitra, erase the idea of is it better to do this, that, or the other thing, and you need to think more high order strategy. What am I going to do, and what am I going to give my attention to for as long as it takes me to get this done, right? So Chitra says, I'm studying a medical system, so it would be like anatomy, physiology. What happened to Sanskrit, Chitra? you might want to pick one battle to tackle first, and the highest order one. So if you're learning Sanskrit, focus on Sanskrit sufficiently enough to hit the ground running with medical topics like anatomy and physiology later. If it was just raw physiology, anatomy, and so forth, I think that you would be very good to do it alphabetically. So you're doing anatomy and physiology in Sanskrit. Well, there you go. There you go. Where in the world do they speak Sanskrit in a hospital? Or wherever you would be doing this? Let me know. That sounds fascinating. Physico is continuing with his problems are boring and repetitive. Just keep on doing that if you want to train your brain to continue to have this problem, Physico. Look, understand this and understand it well and change the behavior as soon as you can. If you're going to sit there and keep talking about how it's boring and repetitive, you're just training your brain to continue thinking of it as boring and repetitive. You're actually creating chemicals that turn that into a habit. So think twice before you type that stuff in here. It's actually garbage. It's not true. You're putting that there and you're hypnotizing yourself. And even worse than hypnotizing yourself, you're creating a phalanx. Look up the word phalanx if you don't know it. You're creating a phalanx of chemicals in your brain that are going to trap you in that thinking the more that you do it. So you're going to freeze yourself into negativity, and Dr. Forget is going to win, and he's going to keep you frozen there. So before you use our chat room to hypnotize yourself and to create a chemical phalanx in your brain, think twice, because typing, as we've talked about here with the Big Five, and writing is a way of reinforcing that absolutely ridiculous, unnecessary, negative habit. You don't need to do it, and we don't need it in this area. We don't need to see people doing that to themselves. It is absolutely unbelievable that you would approach it this way. You've got to change your attitude, and you've got the opportunity to do it now. Just simply type something different in the chat box. Like, for example, I am going to use magnetic memory method to approach this with energy, excitement, the fullest range of the magnetic modes, and I'm going to absolutely conquer this with the hammer of Thor, my friend. The magnetic hammer of your own memory. Bam! This nonsense about things being boring and repetitive is your attitude, and it's got to change. And as soon as possible, please, my friend. This is not helping you. It's not helping anybody, but it's least of all helping you. It's creating a chemical wall that will be harder and harder to break the more that you hypnotize yourself, chemically straitjacket yourself in the belief of this being boring. This is a choice. Make a better choice. So, Michael says, as Anthony was saying for strategy, for a varied approach from Anthony's, my strategic approach for Japanese is not letter, but not by letter, but kanji or synonyms. Yeah, I mean, there's many, many ways. The important thing is that you understand the methods and the techniques. And of course, kanji is its own little world of interest, to be sure. So Chitra says the Ayurvedic texts are in Sanskrit. Okay, so you're not going to be speaking Sanskrit in your approach to applying this medicine. Yeah, I don't know exactly what to advise you other than to take the free course and start to create your system from there. All right. Ryan's Internet Adventure says, totally agree with that. Attitude is like 70% of learning. As cheesy as it sounds, it's true. A good attitude leads to so much positivity. If you're bored by anything, you should try meditation ASAP. Yeah, exactly. Meditation. I mean, you are meditating. You're meditating on the problem, and it's just unnecessary. Meditate on the solution. As Ryan's Internet Adventure says, nothing will be boring after that. James is here. Good evening from Canada's East Coast. Does NB count as East Coast? Excellent. I guess so, yeah. Maybe. I have to look at the map of my home country. Chitra says, I agree with meditation. Meditation is everything, my friend. It will set you free, but you've got to meditate on a more positive message. All right, so we don't really want to study for long hours if we can avoid it. And if we do, we want to plan our breaks. Planning meditation in your breaks is very, very good. But if you're a diligent student, you still want to study for long hours because it's so much fun, right? And I certainly did. That's all I did. I studied and studied and studied. When I wasn't studying, I was studying some more. And that's just the way that went for me because I was totally in my bliss, totally enjoying everything that I was doing. And it was just unbelievable. It wasn't work at all. So one of the things that you want to consider is, are you really studying the right topic? And if you're not on fire for it, and if you're going around telling others and yourself that it's boring and repetitive, then maybe you got to be studying something else for sure. So if you're going to be like one of these people who's on fire for the topic and studying for long hours, make sure that you're making some breaks for yourself and beat the syllabus. So one of the things to do is get the syllabus as soon as you can. There's nothing that stops you from emailing the professor and asking for the syllabus before that the year begins. And if they don't have it ready yet, you could ask for an earlier version of the syllabus so that you can get started on it. Now, I've done this and the professor has said, look, I'm happy to give you last year's syllabus, but I'm doing significant changes to it. And I just said, no problem. I still want to beat it. I want to know everything that's on there and read as much of it as I can, even if there are changes. And so you get that syllabus in advance. And if you can't get it in advance, as soon as you get it, get started right away. So what does get started right away mean? Well, make sure you have all the books. If you're in, like, there are some books that were so expensive, there was no way that I could get them when I was in university. So I made sure that I found every possible library in advance, got it on order if I needed to, and I got it done. So there were no issues, got it read. And very, very important to do that so that you're not ever at the last minute wishing and hoping and praying that you had that book to speed through, because you can get it in advance. There's so much time. People have so much time in a day if they really look at their time properly. So you can do this. The other thing is you can also get started on your essay assignments, even if it's at the smallest level. So I used to see, okay, an essay is going to be due in October 15th or whatever. Get it on the calendar, and I would start to select the text that I would work on already. And sometimes I would even, as soon as I could, imagine what that title would be, what kind of angle I was going to focus on. And, I'd heard at some point from Wayne Dyer that when he had a book that he was writing, he used to draw out the cover of the book and put it in front of him. And I thought of that with essays as well. And I would draw little drawings of what my essays would be like if they were books that were published. And this is really, really important because you're creating a kind of mental goal that helps you move towards it. It draws you more towards it because you've made it real for your mind in advance. and then you can move step by step towards something that's more real to your mind because you've made it real to your mind. And if you don't do this, then it will always remain vague. It'll just be a vague deadline. But you don't need to ever have vague deadlines in your mind. You can have very real and concrete deadlines that are very, very real because you've symbolized to your mind, to the actual physical mind, the brain, and you've put in the chemicals an image of what that's going to be like. Likewise, you can also put the reward in place. So if I get this done a week in advance, I'm going to reward myself by doing whatever. I used to, even as a university student, I would have the concert calendar and I would get tickets for concerts in advance. And I would, tell myself that I have to give this to a friend if I don't get my stuff done in time. Never happened, but it's a great sort of little carrot and stick you can play with yourself and have your rewards in advance. And it really just motivates you, And then, you can read years ahead. So you can do this in a number of ways that we'll talk about and we'll pick up as we go along. But what I mean by reading years in advance is when you are reading a book, and let's say we are reading Maps of Meaning, there's this massive list of references in the end, right? And you can go and you can just, this book is done in 1999, and you can go and you can look for the most recent references or the oldest references for that matter, and you just pick the one that's most interesting, the one that's most related to your studies, and then you go ahead and you go and look at it. Like, for example, in this one, probably the key text would be some Piaget, right? So why would I pick that? Well, because it's got one of the persons, the names is referenced the most is Piaget. So there's something going on with Piaget. This is part of priming. So when you see that an author is really, really citing a lot of text from one particular source, that's the one. And you go and you get at least one book from that person, and ideally another book that is an overview of that person so that you can read a core text and read around the core text. So this is really, really important. Chitra says, agree. Gotta love what you do. Yeah, absolutely. Reclaiming Life. William is here. Hello. Good to see you. Former resident of Canada's East Coast. Now in Buffalo. That's right. Yeah. Good to see you. Thanks for saying hello. Ryan's Internet Adventure. Do you recommend meditation on the breath between study sessions? The theory is to give your brain a break, but do you consider meditation as a break for the brain or exerting effort? Good question. We're going to pick up with that in a minute. But in general, there's an interesting book. Let me show you the cover here. It's called Rest by Alex Sujung Kim Pang. And one of the things that he suggests in here is that you can actually get rest from work, provided that it's work of a particular kind. And so what that means, and just to give you a practical example that comes from my own university studies, is I wrote a lot in university. I wrote my essays ahead of time as much as possible. I wrote them way longer than they needed to be. And then I wrote novels. And those novels technically are the same physical and mental activity of producing stuff from the mind, but I found it deeply restful. And this is all based on research, but his argument here is that you can get great rest by applying the efforts of competences that you have that are related to the work that you do. It sounds kind of weird, right? Do some rest by doing more work, but it can be incredibly restful. So consider that, and consider how that meditation is not necessarily something that you do, but rather it's something you remember. And what I mean by this is that when you sit down to meditate, if you're going to use breath as something that you are focusing on as a tool, which is a worthy thing to do, but I don't think it's a proper understanding of what meditation is, or even a particularly fruitful one. What you need to do, or what you want to consider, is that you're remembering your breath rather than using it as a tool to focus on. Now, there's a multitude of exercises for the breath, but even when I'm speaking, I'm often thinking about breath and doing certain things with alternate nostril breathing and so forth, and thinking about the breath in general and just staying with the breath. But that's not really necessarily the same thing as being meditative or watching my mental contents or tracking this creature that is behaving in certain ways right now, and allowing a certain level of frustration with people who hypnotize themselves into thinking that information is boring, for example. This is all being tracked and monitored from a fairly conscious level, even if that conscious level shows up a few minutes later and thinks, is this right? Or is this too much? Or et cetera, and then says, no, it's okay. And besides, you can't control the outcome of it anyway, right? So it's interesting. But what you want to do is think about what meditation really is and what you're doing there as an opportunity to train yourself to just be meditating, period, all the time, not while you're meditating. I don't think the theory of meditation is to give your brain a break at all, as you've typed there, and I don't think that that's actually what it does. That's not the purpose of meditation. Meditation is training ground for you noticing your brain all the time and noticing what you really are and what's going on in front of the screen of what you really are. And if you find it very, very amusing, then that's great. But then the point of meditation, real meditation work, would then be to do inquiry around what exactly it is that is finding anything amusing. Because if you get tied up in that thing that is finding things amusing, then you're not free yet, right? You're not really aware of what you really are. So this is maybe a little bit heady stuff for people here, but it's really important, and it's where the real work of meditation will set you free. And just to help you understand this a little bit more, there's a passage in the early pages of The Fire of Self-Knowledge where it tells us that kindling wood is the indirect cause of cooking, and fire is the direct cause of cooking. And so our practice in meditation, which is like our practice in study, is the indirect cause of liberation. But it's the actual knowledge that is the direct cause of liberation. And it's the same thing with study. All these things that we're talking about here is really the indirect cause of what ultimately ends up getting into our mind. What is the direct cause of the knowledge from what ultimately gets in our mind is having the knowledge itself. And that's why when we talk about things like the Big Five, we are now moving from being the container, the storage device of knowledge, to the actual device through which it is retrieved and repopulated into the world, which is where real knowledge happens. Knowledge is not something that is in you. Knowledge is in something that connects with others. It is in the process, right? And so that's why that the actual study techniques are an indirect cause of the goal, whereas the actual goal, the end game goal, is the ultimate source of the knowledge. All right, so hope that makes that clear, even if it sounds a little bit gobbledygooky. But let's read the actual passage to make sure that I got it right here. Just as chopping wood is the indirect cause and fire the direct cause of cooking, spiritual practice is the indirect cause and self-knowledge the direct cause of liberation. Pretty good. So, yeah, keep that in mind. But if you're using breath as a tool in meditation, and you think that meditation is to relax your mind or give yourself a break, that's not what it's about. And I would consider this point from Rest. Read Rest if you haven't. You are actually moving from a competence to a competence, and you're getting rest from a different application of the competence. In the same way that when I wrote essays and I switched to writing novels, I was getting rest from switching the outcome of the competence without actually taking a rest. So, let's see here. Chitra says, can you repeat the name of the book, please? Rest. Why You Get More When You Work Less by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. So here it is. Take a screenshot. Excellent book. I think it's really the best book of its kind that I read in 2018. And thank you, Reclaiming Life, for popping in the full title there. Really appreciate that. All right. William suggests you should start an email opt-in just for book recommendations or a Magnetic Memory book club. Yeah, we've had one in the past, and we might redo that again. Chitra says, love the Wayne Dyer reference, going to try that. And Reclaiming Life agrees. When you personalize things, even syllabi, they become more real and practical to you. Yes, indeed. X Bluebells is here. Tina, right? From Indianapolis. It sounds like along with magnetic memory, you use magnetic goal setting. Yes, indeed. Everything requires a goal. And that's the beauty of the knowledge shared in Maps of Meaning, is that it has the secret to setting goals that you actually can achieve by working from your existing competence. Let's see here. College Success says, Dr. Metivier, it sounds like when you get the textbook ahead of time, you're better able to get the picture early on, going a long way to making a Memory Palace movie great. Yeah, well, that's part of it, right? Is you're able to see the big picture. And that's what you should be doing, is seeing the big picture as much as you can, but also seeing the picture that surrounds the picture. So it's not only the big picture of what you have to study, but what's the context? What's the discussion around the discussion? So this is really, really important. We're going to get into some more tips around this. Let me just catch up with some of these chats here. Michael Swain says, would that make a case for doing activities you are competent in without raising the difficulty, as opposed to aiming for constant novelty and improvement? Are they not exclusive? Yeah, that's a good question, Michael. X Bluebell says, how did you remember my name? That is amazing. That's my job. But thank you for confirming. Yeah, actually, and you know what? To answer Michael's question about challenge, I find it really challenging to memorize names of people I haven't seen. So I'm much better at memorizing names when I've seen people in front of my very eyes. But when I've never actually seen you or whatever, and I have to match a screen name to a real name, that's like a level of challenge, but it's going from my existing competence. And speaking of names, this is the craziest thing. I came out of the gym last week, and I hear this voice, Anthony! And I was like, what? Looking around, I was looking at the cafe, and I was like, I don't see anybody there. And then finally my eyes hit this guy in a car. And he gets out, Abraham was his name. And he's like, I've been looking for you. What? So anyway, I was going to buy him a coffee, but Boyd's of Coffee was shutting down. And we sat on the bench there. And anyway, he was looking for me because he also wants to help people learn faster and so forth. And so I had to memorize his name right then, and it's a lot easier because he's there and we can use the surrounding environment as the memory palace and so forth. But then his son shows up, whose name is Lem. So now I got to like think of Lemmy from Motorhead, bam. And then his daughter shows up, Amy. And as we're all meeting and I'm memorizing these names, and Amy was a bit of a challenge. I don't think I've ever even memorized an Amy before, but I thought of Amy Porterfield from the internet world. And I thought, oh, I have a cousin named Amy, so I got them going. Then we're sitting there, and this woman named Lisa comes and says, hey, aren't you Anthony? And I was like, yeah. So on the same day, recognized by two groups of people, because she was with someone named Ruby, same thing. I see like Lisa Simpson is now doing something that I won't mention with the ruby slippers and from The Wizard of Oz and so forth. So that's a lot easier for me to do in the real world than it is with people I've never seen. But I always try to memorize names anyway off of the screen. So thanks again for confirming, Tina. I really appreciate that. And it is amazing. It amazes me as much as it amazes anybody else. And it's just good brain exercise and practice and a great way to help people. Let's see here. So anyway, Michael, to sort of get back to your question, yeah, it does seem like a contradiction in terms, But it really isn't, because if you understand the challenge frustration curve, then you know that you just need to focus on something that's challenging enough to create growth, but not so frustrating that you get frustrated and quit, right? So that's really, really important. Reclaiming Life says Maps of Meaning is by Jordan Peterson, in case anyone was wondering. Yes, Jordan B. Peterson, and The Fire of Self-Knowledge. And this is actually a translation of the Atma Bodha by James Swartz. Really recommend this. It's beautiful, beautiful. All right. So Reclaiming Life says, to memorize my name with my face, picture Santa Claus. I'm a real bearded Santa, dyed from black to white hair and beard. All right, that's helping. That's that's starting to create an image. Always good to put a name to a face, even if it's a highly imaginative one. Starting to get there. Great. Malala is here. How to make keywords from a paragraph page. Great. Well, we'll answer that question in a minute, but I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'll be right back, and if you want to stick around, that's great. If not, we'll see you next time. But coming up, we're going to talk about how you can use a number of additional tricks to help yourself study hard for long hours in ways that improve your memory, and that will resume in just about 3 to 5 minutes. So we'll be right back. If you haven't said hello yet in the chat, use that opportunity now to pile up some questions or just generally say hello. Let me know where you are in the world. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't already, and let's rock and roll in about 2 to 5 minutes from now. Talk to you in a minute. And we are back. Let me know in the chat that you can hear me and everything is running again. Isan is here, says hello. Chitra says, another great translation of Atma Bodha is through the Chimyanda mission, word by word. Excellent, excellent. Reclaiming Life says, to anyone new to Anthony Metavier's live streams, the more you attend, the more you learn, even as a student of the masterclass. Well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. And yeah, by the way, the last live stream was on how to memorize vocabulary, and I did that rare thing of giving some mnemonic examples. I had my dictionary of German slang that we never got to. We just did some English mnemonic examples. So if you're learning English, you might want to do that. And if you're new here, make sure that you get subscribed to this channel. Hit that thumbs up. And remember, Edgar the Elephant, he's here for the long walk. And so, unfortunately, is the evil Dr. Forget, who will freeze you in your place if you use all kinds of bizarre mental hypnosis against yourself, because there's no reason to not be super excited about every piece of information. All right, so everybody can hear. Excellent. Thank you for that little pause. Much appreciated. So, yeah, we're going to talk about beating the syllabus, or we already talked about beating the syllabus. And getting everything started and reading years ahead from real publications. So let's talk about real publications, because a lot of people are cheating themselves and they don't really realize that they're doing it. And I've said this for years. I said it when the internet was not nearly the beast that it is now. And I still say it because it's so important. It's so obvious to me because I go to the library 3 to 5 times a week, and it's obvious every single time that I'm there. And it's this: if you're doing your research online only, you're not doing research. Period. Period. I think it's still around 15% of human knowledge is online. It might be more now, might be, but the point is the vast majority of human knowledge is not online, is never going to be online. And even if it was online, we have digital amnesia as a problem. So when I say that you want to read years ahead from real publications, I mean real. I mean, knock on wood, actual books that you can feel in your hands. And this is really, really important. And we can go on and on a big long speech, but ultimately what it boils down to is that our brains respond to the real. That's why these live streams are a very good supplement, as Reclaiming Life was just suggesting, to the actual training in the masterclass. And you really want the best of those both worlds in order to unlock what's going on, because when we're here real and it's in real time, we're connecting at a different level. If you're typing things in, you're following the chat, then it's more engaging and it's more it's connecting at a deeper level. But when you have actual books in your hands, when you're actually reading, what you're essentially doing is a number of things. You're accessing knowledge that has older forms of hypertext, let's say. So I just gave the example of looking through maps of meaning and looking through the index, or rather the list of citations. The index will serve as well, and just being like, wow, look at all that Piaget, right? Well, when this is buried in a Kindle, or heaven forbid that someone would actually read all of this in the audiobook, you'll never know that it exists, right? And you'll never be in a place where you're likely to actually be able to say, oh, Piaget, and then pump them into the library catalog, walk for about a minute and a half, and then have a spread of Piaget right in front of you to select from, right? And so then you can just simply go through the materials there very, very quickly, especially if you know a bit about quote unquote speed reading, or what I prefer to call prime reading, and then, make decisions on what it is that you actually want to devote your time to. But get an overview, create a bigger map, a mental map that has larger parameters than you'll ever get from digital. You just can't get that way. So Physical says, can't we just print PDFs? Books are not cheap. Well, sure you can, but that doesn't really give you the effect of being in a real library, as I'm suggesting. And I know that not everybody can necessarily get to libraries, but I'll bet you that if you think about it, you might be able to. And, there's just things that even if I could print out all these PDFs, like I can read from the Neuro Leadership Journal very, very quickly. And, William's absolutely right to point out that we want to be reading journals as well. And these are just like really super fast to get through. And the other thing is you have years of material to get through, right? You can just stack it all up, breeze through it, and see a story emerge, a history emerge through just actively reading through journals. And you can do it very, very quickly and make connections. And these have connections to other books and other connections that you can make. But it's very, very unlikely to do that online and to get the big picture, because then everything's in tabs, everything is just hypertext, and then you just end up in this hunter-gatherer syndrome that never connects with your brain at the highest possible level. You're just gathering links, you're lost in digital amnesia, and as Reclaiming Life says, citation exists for a purpose, use it, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so I hope that makes sense. And one of your best tools while you're in and we're going to talk about them in a little bit more depth later, but one of your best tools while you're in a library is the good old-fashioned index card. This is my weapon of choice, along with memory techniques and being able to prime the reading. So that's important. Let's see here. The other thing too is just a good old-fashioned notebook. So memory journal, fits in your back pocket, easy peasy, lemon squeezy to get them. I use VBlock, which I absolutely adore and love, and will continue to use for life. A friend of mine just sent a picture of himself with Carrot Head. How often do you meet Carrot Head? That's amazing. So, and memorable too. I mention it because Carrot Head is a great potential figure for your memory palaces. All right, so we had a question here about how to make keywords from a paragraph page. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but one of the great ways to do that is to mind map. So we'll get to that. I don't want you to think that we've forgotten. And you also asked Malala, a loud study is better. Tell me, please. I'm not sure what you mean by a loud study, so please let me know what you were speaking about there. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, any questions that you might have. All right, let's see. Claiming Life says he loves audiobooks to pre-read while walking or exercising. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with audiobooks. Definitely not. But there's something about audiobooks that don't allow you to navigate a book out of order while that you're going back and forth. And so definitely audiobooks are great. But it's, as you say, then read the real thing. Physical says a lot of people here are not fond of good physical books in the library. It's such a shame. Well, that's, everybody has their choice. Claiming Life says I carry a passport-sized traveler's notebook as my wallet now. Yeah, actually, it's usually you mentioned that because I've often used these as a kind of ersatz wallet myself. These notebooks in particular, I haven't used this one at all, but if you let me show you something. If you look at all my memory journals, you'll see that and this is just, I don't know, maybe 5% of them or so. You'll see that many of them have a wallet-like function. Let me see if I can just find one representative example. They are just stuffed with memories from having been a wallet. So here we go. This one is just full of stuff. And I can look through it and be totally reminded wonderfully of, oh, right, my band played this concert. Totally forgot about that. And we must have been busy that year because there's another one. Oh, that's where that went. Huh, interesting. Don't need it, but that's where it is. Oh, my goodness. Amazing. So it's just like a beautiful wallet for memories. So I highly recommend, all right, that you get some sort of journal that has a little bit of a wallet in there. And then you have like this fun little extra memory journal plus. I've been recently going through them to gather some experiences in this way and unlock some more chemicals in my brain that are filled with wonderful memories. All right. Reclaiming Life says indexes are horrid in audiobook format. Yes, they are. And, back when I first started listening to audiobooks, they had a lot. Really, if you wanted stuff, you needed to get it from the people who narrated for the blind, and you'd get these cassettes with Braille and stuff, and they would read everything, and so that could be a little bit of an ordeal to get through. All right, so carrying on, here are some more strategies for you. One of the things that can really help you to be continuously studying and feeding your mind with information that you want to get into your mind is emailing yourself your summaries. So this is a little bit contradiction to the digital amnesia thing, but it's still very good, and it's a great security measure that you don't lose your knowledge as well. So you're writing your summary and you email it to yourself, and then you see what it is that you summarized from the material. So you get writing and reading. Also, when you're engaged in study, like for example, maybe Piaget, for example, you can put Piaget into your Google Alerts, and then whenever Piaget comes up, I recommend like a weekly digest, you'll get some emails with links where he's there. And that's a way to rapidly read through a bunch of material and then follow up on some hypertexts and pick some knowledge there. Another thing is that there are a number of calls for papers websites that you can find and register for and have keywords sent to you. So this depends on your level of interest in your area of expertise, but you want to potentially look at the calls for papers for upcoming conventions, upcoming journals that are going to be published, and so forth. And that will really, really help you make sure that you're playing the long game in your studies and getting a lot more out of the tools that you already have online, so that you're not entirely lost in what you're doing there and you're getting knowledge-based emails. Another strategy is to read your professors. Now, not a lot of people don't even know what their professors have published, let alone read the stuff, but actually read the material. And then you'll find out who their pet philosophers are. They may not tell you who those pet philosophers are, or whoever they find to be an expert. So then you can see their lineage at a much higher level. And this lets you do a number of things, everything from demonstrating your knowledge of your own professor's knowledge, but also being able to demonstrate your knowledge of their lineage, their interests, who they think are the experts, and so forth. And that helps you follow up on a lot of citations and references that they may make in coded terms, but not put out there. And then you connect more things in your brain, which is part of helping you continually summarize. Because the more broad knowledge you have, the more connections you will make. And the more connections you make, the more you're going to remember. This is really, really important. So it helps you continually summarize in your mind. So Reclaiming Life also suggests Midori and Fodori type notebooks to help index yourself, what you're learning, get new refills as you go along, and press release sites, which you can set for various topics. Indeed, yeah, I haven't thought of that, but press releases is another way to keep on top of what's going on. Physico says, can you give some links for neuroscience papers? Would love to have a bibliography to show people about mnemotechnics. Well, yeah, that's possible in the future. There's a lot of that stuff. Keep in mind that a lot of these people don't actually use memory techniques themselves. So we need to obviously read all that stuff as we can. But what I'm thinking of sometimes is going back to school and becoming a neuroscientist myself, because there are obviously some questions that they should be asking that aren't being asked because they're not mnemonists themselves. And it's odd, but some of them, they'll sometimes just outright say, we've never used these memory techniques ourselves, as if it's a point of pride or something. Bizarre. Neurons that wire together, fire together. Indeed, good point about that. The more connections you have, the better you'll remember it. Remember, though, that there's the dark side of neurons wiring together and firing together, is that they also die together. So we want to keep the garden of our minds well nourished and continue to read. Never stop reading. Always continue. And this gets back to Physico's negativity around repetition. You're in it for life. There's only so much knowledge under the sun, and you're going to come across the same ideas again and again and again. And if you come at it with a negative attitude, you are just cruising for a bruising. You're going to suffer again and again and again until you change that attitude. Because as Gilles Deleuze pointed out so well, difference is repetition, right? Every repetition is always different. And if you approach it properly, you're going to have a well-tended garden of your mind, right? And those dendritic spines are going to be just they're going to have turgor pressure and they're going to last for life. But if you come at, oh, this is boring because I've seen this before, you haven't understood yet just how important seeing things again and again and again from a fresh attitude and a welcoming, opening perspective really, really is. So don't set yourself up for torture. Be in it for the long road and understand that repetition is always difference. And you don't have to take my word for it, because I think that Deleuze made the case very, very well. And so that's a book, Difference in Repetition, that I highly recommend reading. Also, The Logic of Sense. Anti-Oedipus and the 1,000 Plateaus are more of his famous texts with Guattari, Felix Guattari. Yeah, read them too. As Reclaiming Life says, you only have one life to gather knowledge, and as you've learned, the more you gather, you'll eventually plant more by writing your own iterations of what has been taught before. Exactly, yeah. Like, this is the goal, right? Is you want to become part of society. You know, Goethe talked about this all the time in his Bildungsroman, which are the novels of social education. The social propaganda that he was putting out there was, how do we convince young people to join the society and return what they've learned to the society, right? And we still see this. We still see this as being so important. Like, the Avengers came up earlier today, and when you think about kind of this wariness about letting Spider-Man into the Avengers, right? It's kind of like, well, he doesn't have the social responsibility yet to know that he needs to return his value to the larger field. So we'll wait until that, he has the maturity to be able to do that. And then, of course, Iron Man intuits and knows that he has to give him a little bit of slack and let him learn how to do that through action, through actually participating in the only activities that will ever give him that wisdom. And so it's very much in the Bildungsroman tradition. Goethe could have written Spider-Man in some sense, and the Avengers stories. But in any case, we want to really, really understand that this is for life, and we want to, as Reclaiming Life puts it so elegantly, we want to return the iteration. We want to become the device through which the knowledge moves forward. And this is pretty much, what Plato said in Allegory of the Cave. Very, very important. All right. So Physico says, I know that me and repetition are not good friends. I know that's a problem, but what now? I would really like some ideas to break from this cycle. Well, that's great. So first of all, you don't have to be friends with repetition. You need to see it as a tool. And there's creative repetition, there's good attitude repetition, and there's the difference between rote learning, which is the blunt force hammer of repetition, and creative magnetic repetition that is using all the full magnetic modes of your mind. So Michael here is suggesting that gratitude journaling is a very, very good way of changing perspective in a matter of a week. So there's creative repetition right there. Every day you should be keeping a journal of gratitude. This is something that I do again and again and again. I've done it for years now. It's absolutely very, very important, and a huge part of is just my own attitude, because believe me, I can fall into I used to be able to fall quite easily into a negative attitude, but I'm not able to hardly at all anymore due to these activities. Reclaiming Life is suggesting read similar materials on the same topic, so it's not straight repetition. That's a good thing as well. Continue to approach things from different angles, and just be open to studying the same things again and again, and make sure that you're using the big five, because if you're not using the big five, then that's probably part of the problem, and part of why it gets boring, because that in and of itself is a wonderful, wonderful way to create difference through repetition. And as Reclaiming Life is saying, citations, works, references, etc. Because you'll see that, ultimately what you'll see is that pretty much all of humanity is pushing towards the same end, and all knowledge has this kind of meeting point. And there are micro and macro expressions of this meeting point, and you'll see that there's just kind of an endless, seemingly endless novelty in it all. But you don't get to see that novelty if you've decided in advance that you've seen it all before or you've heard it all before. That's why I have piles of books about memory techniques. I never assume for a second that I know it all or that I know it from the angle that someone else knows it. That's just a destructive idea. But rather to go through it again and again and again from the lens of different people who were born in a different place, who have read things that I've never read, who have had experiences that I've never had, who have practiced under such conditions and situations that I've never practiced, to be able to be open to their knowledge and their expertise, even if it is repetitive at some level, is to find the difference in the repetition and understand that repetition is always different. It must be. And then you go and do all these things. So you follow up on the citations and references. They're always mentioning something. Like there's just disagreement in the memory world, for example, on who exactly came up with the major. And just endless fun to like go back and look at the major again and again, the history of the major method, and be like, yeah, that's amazing. Let's look at that further and study it again. And then you see, oh, wow, they did it this way. And it just completely opens up new parts of your brain. Very, very important. Now, one of the things that's going to have you hit the ground running is to keep a memory journal. And keeping a memory journal, as we've already seen, is pretty awesome because you lay this history for yourself and you're like, wow, I played that concert. Amazing. And then you remember your friends and the bands and whatever it is that you store in there. Unfortunately, there really aren't that many concerts that I get to go to here in Brisbane, although that might change because I finally found out where to register for notifications. But, you know, there's just so many wonderful, wonderful things that you can look back through and refresh, see where you've been, and have a way of testing what you've memorized that is separate from the actual books. So that's pretty important. Now, mind mapping I want to mention, as always, because mind map mastery is very, very simple to develop so long as you have the knowledge. So get Mind Map Mastery by Tony Buzan. And I'm going to share a link with you so that you can follow up with the what we'll just temporarily call the major mind map, which is to use the major method for your mind mapping activities, because you can make it a lot easier for yourself when you do, in terms of just using simple numbers to essentially turn the mind map into a memory palace. So let me dig that link up for you. It's wonderful how it all works, and it is a woefully undershared post. So while you are reading through this, share that around for me if you would, because we want to see that having the huge numbers of the doom and gloom posts that we have on the site. Chitra says, do you have a technique for journaling? Yes. One of the techniques I'll share with you right here in another link that you should check out, bookmark it, read it, is to use the Freedom Journal or the Mastery Journal. So this is the Mastery Journal here, nice and silver, and you can get one of those by going to magneticmemorymethod.com/TFJ, and you can also get the Freedom Journal. And so if you follow that link I just posted, you'll be able to see how to combine it with a memory palace and do your gratitude journaling all at the same time. But these are amazing for being consistent and having a lot of fun and not forgetting your commitment to yourself, because they're real. real. By the way, on the topic of mind mapping, I wanted to point out that you should also be reading 101 Top Tips for Better Mind Maps by the wonderful Phil Chambers. And that's what this review bullet point is all about, is you want to review your mind maps. So let's say you have a memory journal and you have a mind map journal. You want to review your mind maps. And if you use the technique that I'm teaching on that second link there, or rather the first link that I just posted, of the two that I just posted, you're going to find that you can mentally review your mind maps so long as you use the major as I suggest there to formulate it very, very easily. But let's say you don't want to do that. Well, one of the tips, just one, that Phil Chambers shares in here is using Roman numerals to track how many times that you've reviewed individual mind maps, and go for 10. He basically, I think, is the suggestion in here. But this is an absolutely foundational and wonderful, wonderful little guide that everybody should have to supplement this Mind Map Mastery by Tony Buzan. And if you're not convinced, then, go ahead and read my assessment on why that you need those things, so that you can also learn how to use the major in addition to mind maps, and you'll get a lot out of that. So Reclaiming Life asks, what's the difference with the Mastery Journal from the Freedom Journal? So the Freedom Journal is really for like one big goal, but the Mastery Journal lets you fractionate into 4 missions. So you could conceivably work at 4 things at the same time. And so you can do your morning routine. It looks like a bit of overwhelm when you first see it. When I first saw it, I thought, oh no, this is never going to work. Not for me. But when I dove in, got used to it, now I swear by it. I've used the Freedom Journal since then, but it breaks everything into 4 missions, and it's just absolutely wonderful. You can do your gratitude journaling on there. The only thing is that there isn't really room for a memory palace there, in the same way that there is in the Freedom Journal. So that's the core difference, is breaking things down into 4 missions. So that's something that I highly recommend. Moving forward, as I keep saying throughout this, if you really want to learn how to study for memorization, play the long game. Make sure that you are constantly in love with the topic that you're putting so much time and energy into. Let that love and passion be its own energy, its own guide, and make connections with other people who also love that topic. Attend conferences and talks. That's why I shared the thing about calls for papers. Get involved and create your own group if you absolutely must. So it's really, really important to do this. You've got to play the long game. And one of the things that I often suggested when I was a professor myself, and still do when I meet people in university, is write as much as you can, and ideally publish as soon as you can, if you can. And you can. And there's a number of reasons to do that, one of which is for your own benefit in learning, so that you are indeed learning at a very deep level and remembering more, but also so you're establishing your expertise, your name in the field. Even if you never wind up going to grad school or anything like that, it's very, very good for your resume later to be a published expert in your field, a leader. It's a way of demonstrating leadership. And I published like crazy when I was in university, both in the small press world with fiction and poetry, and also as soon as I possibly could in scholarly journals. And it's really been helpful in many, many ways, both for the experience and for the expertise that it helps you generate in terms of being a leader in your field, a voice who shares, and being able to understand how that world works, and have a number of publications ready that help you get grants, that help you get a job later, that help you have more connections in your field. And it's just absolutely beautiful. And it's a great way of also getting to know other experts and getting their feedback. So even if you never get published in a journal, because of the peer review process, you'll get feedback from experts that you wouldn't otherwise get, right? And they will treat you differently because you're publishing in a context, or you're asking to be published in a context that is very, very different than handing it in for a grade, because they'll be looking at it very, very differently. So William says, even if you can't attend the conferences, quite often talks from them are online. Yeah, and you can be active in the comments, and you can email those people your summaries of what you heard from them. Reclaiming Life says you don't have the networking, but you can ascertain the knowledge that was disseminated there. Yes, but I would say, again, you ascertain it only to the extent that you actually put it into writing, put it into conversation, and share with others, including the authors themselves. Be part of the dialogue. Be part of the discourse. Physical says, where can we find big pieces of paper? Google. I do find it very hard to use mind maps using only keywords and make them fit well on a small paper. Some ideas. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure that there's what you would call stationery stores in your neighborhood, either big ones or small ones. And if you do need to work on, look, we can make a mind map on a small piece of paper right now. What shall we mind map? It's very, very simple. Not sure if this is going to work, but pen. Ideally a colored one. My colors are somewhere else. But here's a piece of paper, right? So we want our central idea or image in the center. And let's see. How to find big pieces of paper. So I'm going to put paper right here in the center. So here's my keyword, right? Let's see if we can get that. Paper. And let's see. So, well, I put a little stream here, and we could actually ask, does it have to be paper? How about cardboard, right? So maybe tear apart some boxes that are in the closet and that you don't need. And so I draw a little box there and put cardboard. So maybe you can do it on cardboard. And then if I had my colors, I would do the Google colors. And, we can mind map, walk through the neighborhood. Maybe I just put a little man doing walking, little pedestrian man there, and so on. So it's really not that complicated. If you haven't gone to the website to read about the 10 rules from on the Magnetic Imagery Method podcast, then I recommend that you do that, and I recommend that you get Tony's book so that you're able to learn that. Maricella says, Physical, I work in the schools. They have a lot of paper, different colors in the library or teacher's lunch. It's not a cost for you. Yeah, maybe you can just go to your school and ask. There's paper all over the place. Speaking of which, there are recycling boxes often around where they have sent that paper away. They no longer want it. And you could write on the back of some of those things. And people are throwing away posters all the time. So you can do that as well. It's not the size of the paper. It's the technique. And it's the diligence with the practice. But obviously bigger does help. So I would get an artist's sketchbook so that they're all bound together in a book rather than loose leaf papers that are just going to get lost all over the place, and go from there. So that's very important to do as well. All right. So basically, we want to make sure that we have the long game in mind and that we are seeing how we're going to make connections that are bigger than ourselves as individuals with the larger field of professionals so that we can develop our expertise as soon as possible. And you might be thinking, well, I'm just an undergraduate student. How am I supposed to do this? And, well, you just do it. You just get started and you'll see. The Tintandavia was my university's logo, I believe. And that means the way must be tried. And you just shed light on the journey as you go along. Tintandavia, yeah, there we go. That was correct. Good thing I memorized or I got it right with my university motto. But it's really, really important. And I'm really glad that my university had that because I took it to heart. Instead of humming and hawing and thinking, I just knew that the way was the path to knowledge. If you want to know something, you just get started and you know it. And another book that I wanted to mention today is The Luck Factor by Richard Weissman. It has a number of exercises in it that will help you understand just how important taking action is and how blind most of us are to opportunity that's right in front of us. So if you haven't read The Luck Factor, please do. This is not woo-woo or wish-wash. Luck is real, and you can create it for yourself. And you do it by knowing that the way must be tried. So when you read books like this and there are exercises, do the exercises. This has been tremendously useful for me because I did the exercises. And that's really the number one thing, is that if you're going to study any topic, that topic always proposes actions to take. And so back to that speed of implementation principle. When you are given the opportunity to take an action, you need to do it as quickly as possible, provided that it's safe and reasonable and rational. And in the world of education, most things are. So it's really, really important to just dive in and allow the journey to show you what you need to be doing and how to do it. And you will absolutely move faster and farther than you'd ever think. And you'll enable yourself to learn faster than you ever imagined possible, because you're letting action be your guide, rather than getting caught up in a lot of questions that only action can answer. And that's just one of the frustrating realities about many, many things in life, is that the answer is actually in the movement rather than in this or that wise person's, knowledge about this, that, or the other thing. And so Gary Weber in Happiness Beyond Thought, which is around here somewhere, he says that the best teachers teach by abandonment. And what that means is they give you the lesson and then they leave you with the opportunity to make the connections through action in your own mind. So if you don't have the free kit, click the link in that description or in our chat box right now. Make sure you register for it so that you can dive in and put this knowledge into action. Action is so important. Reclaiming Life says, speed of implementation led me to purchase so many fountain pens and notebooks in a short period of time. I'm glad I did. It changed my life. Excellent. I'm glad to hear that, because it is so important. It's been so important to me to understand the speed of implementation rule. And, there's many, many ways that it manifests in your life. And yeah, there's a bit of lottery aspect to it at some level, but you've got to follow through and understand the power of follow through and following up consistently again and again and again. Because if you're not doing that, you're going to really, really challenge your ability to make progress. So Chitra says, ever the student means a good teacher. Indeed, indeed, indeed. So now, one of the last things that I wanted to talk about, which has somehow disappeared from my slides, I don't know how, was how to be relaxed in an exam situation. So you're doing all this studying. You're either going to have an exam or a job interview or something like this. And so what we want to do is figure out, now that we know how to study hard for long hours, we know that we need to be prepared, we need to be organized, we need to pre-read books properly by, being in libraries and actually using the full opportunities that actual books give that digital books don't, at least not in any comparable way. Then we need to think about how are we going to be relaxed when we sit for the actual exam. And one of the ways to do this is to meditate consistently, and to start to train our breathing so that when we're sat for these exams, we can control our physiology and our minds at a much higher level. So what does that mean? Well, if you get nervous and you start to sweat and that clamps up your thinking, then one of the things that you can do is be prepared by being well rested. Actually practice the practice of being well rested for study, which means not having digital devices in your bedroom. It means using analog clocks instead of digital ones, so that you can be woken up if you need to be woken up by something that doesn't call you, that doesn't encourage you to play games all night or watch videos all night so that you actually get deep, deep rest. And while you're resting, you can meditate. You can do what's called shavasana, which is just laying down on your back and not moving any muscle for as long as you can, except for breathing. And you can focus on a particular kind of breathing, which is called pendulum breathing. And it is breathing in, holding for a second, and then breathing in a little bit more, then breathing out, holding for a sec, and then breathing out a bit more, and circling that. Michael, good to have had you here. Thank you so much for all your interaction. Really appreciated it. And I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Absolutely wonderful. So when you practice this breathing technique and you get good at it, which shouldn't take that long, then when you're in an exam situation, it's normal to feel nervous, or a job interview situation. It's normal to be a bit whacked out. And you can just focus on your breath. Focus on your breath. Julie's here, says, saw you live. I'll catch the repeat. Pendulum breathing is very effective. Thanks for chiming in on that. Glad that you do the pendulum breathing. It is very effective, and you can repeat it anywhere. Now, pendulum breathing is, again, it's very simple. Just breathe in, hold, breathe in again, breathe out, and you're swinging the breath. Now, there's another thing that's very, very relaxing, and I don't do it all the time, but back when I was still feeling nervous about giving public talks and so forth, it's what's called psychic alternate nostril breathing. So you can literally close the nostril like this and breathe in, and then breathe out the other one. Or you can just do it with your mind. And it's pretty neat how your mind can trick you into thinking that you're breathing in one nostril when you're actually breathing in both. But it feels like you're doing that. And you just go. So you can't really see anything there, but I'm pretending to breathe in one nostril and out the other. It's very, very relaxing. Gives your mind something to do. And you can do it with pendulum breathing as well. So you mentally pretend or focus on air just coming in through the left nostril. Then you hold a little bit more, and then out the right nostril, hold a little bit more out the right nostril, and continue to cycle this. And so I love to do this mentally, or I used to, haven't done it for a while, but before giving a talk, I would just stand there waiting, relaxing, up till even the last instant while I'm being introduced, to think of anything but my breath and the moment, enjoying the bustle of all the people around, the clinking of glasses if there was some sort of canteen there, and then just go up and do my thing, completely filled with presence and oxygen and relaxation. And you can do this in an exam or before a job interview. I did this before I defended my dissertation. I just sat there. There were all these people. The public is invited and all this, and a lot of my friends and family wanted to come for some reason. And so they thought that I was nervous and stuff like that, but I was not nervous at all. I was just relaxing, and I was also doing progressive muscle relaxation. So I start with my feet, actually, but it's basically just squeezing and then release and syncing that with the breath. It's very, very relaxing to do. And what you find is that you're still mentally there. You might still mentally have these ideas of worry and whatnot, but it's just calm and cool and relaxed. And you can just repeat it anywhere, even if you're going, to have a surgical procedure or something. You can do this to calm yourself down, As Reclaiming Life says, you learn to literally control your pulse, heart rate, and it drives doctors crazy when you speed it up and slow it back down while having vitals taken. Indeed. Yeah, I've gone and I've never sped it up, but they often tell me that they rarely see like such a heart rate as mine. Really, really important. So Maricella says, breathing is helping me to focus and feel better. I used to move my feet fast while I'm seated down to do some exercise. Yeah, that's interesting. I used to be a real leg mover. I don't know what you call that, but my leg would be like bum 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 bum. Always jitter. That's completely gone from my life, and I think it has a lot to do with this practice of combining muscle relaxation with different breathing exercises. So there's a whole chapter on breathing in the upcoming book. The draft is done, more or less. So stay tuned for that. If you are not subscribed to this channel, make sure you are, so you have news of that new book when it comes out, and make sure that you take the free course so that the new book means a lot more to you, and go through the masterclass if you're already in it, so the book means a lot more to you, and the mastermind and so forth, because the new book is going to go very, very deep into the actual techniques, but it's going to unlock them through some context, some stories, and it's probably coming out like Moonwalking with Einstein, but with the actual focus and concentration on the actual techniques that a lot of people felt that was not ultimately ever in Moonwalking with Einstein. So that's going to be that, and really excited. So I'm going to go and write on that book soon. If you have any final thoughts or questions, let me know in the chat. I'll do a bit of mailbag and then we'll get out of here. Let me know if you have questions about what we talked about today, if there were any that I missed. I don't believe. In terms of keywords from pages, I mean, basically, to get to that question, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are prepared with memory palaces in advance, that you have memory skills, that you have your memory journal in play, that you understand the different techniques and how to do it. There's a whole course in the masterclass called the Master Plan that gets very, very integral into the role of index cards if you want to use them, correctly, if you want to use them mnemonically. Even if you don't want to use them mnemonically, it'll help you a great deal to cross-index them and link them with your memory palaces and so forth. So really a lot to be gained from making sure that you have that course under your belt. But one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we have a proper practice. And then the keywords will not always jump out at us, but key concepts that we then turn into keywords. And so the real answer to the question is just to get started with the practice and learn it. Physico asks, what about learning new words? We learn them from the dictionary or in example phrases? Well, the answer is always both, right? But there's nothing wrong with getting something like this, German slang, and just memorizing it word by word. Ausgepischt, right? And der ist aber ein ausgepischter Kerl. So, you can do both. But I always start from the foundation of the word first, a number of words, and then go back and add phrases. Very, very simple. Harvinder is here. Hello, Harvinder. Great to see you. Good morning to you in India. So wonderful to meet with you today. Always good to see you. So I hope that answers your question. Physico, start with words, add phrases. That's generally what I like. Let's see here. So Alistair says, I forget requests easily. It's becoming embarrassing at work. Great. So one of the things to do is learn memory techniques, memorize the requests that are being demanded of you, and then write them down so that you have a to-do list, so that as you're developing with memory techniques, you're not just relying solely on memory techniques in the beginning. Darren Brown is a great proponent of memorizing to-do lists. At least he was in Tricks of the Mind. I don't know if he still would be a proponent of that, but he says that he's much more likely to get things done in that book if they are in a memory palace. So yeah, you don't have to be embarrassed at work. Just memorize the requests that are made of you. X Bluebells had said similar study environments, study in similar environments if possible, where you will take exams. Similar environments help you re-trigger memory. Yes, that is true when possible. Scott Gosnell, the great translator of Bruno, Scott Gosnell, said that in a very strategic way on our interview, which I will share with you now, because if you haven't heard it, you're really missing out on something special. So let me give you that link, and thanks for that suggestion of studying where you're going to have the exam. It's not always practical. Sometimes the exams are announced at the last minute and so forth, but when possible, definitely. Definitely, for sure. All right, so Holly says, so grateful I came across you. I have tried things like vitamins, but that doesn't seem to help for memory. Yeah, it's an unlikely shot. Overall, we have a post on vitamins for memory improvement, and basically vitamins are not going to give you the memory exercise that you need. The best sort of supplements that I've seen have a 0.05% verbal memory advantage. Water gets you that. So just hydrate your brain with water. Reclaiming Life says, many times if you repeat them directly to yourself as soon as you read or are given them, helps you remember them due to your awareness and self-awareness, mindfulness working together. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, if you're embarrassed at work and you want to be more professional, obviously the thing to do is to do exactly what William is suggesting and memorize it and write it down and schedule it, put it on the calendar, like actually say, this is the time when I'm going to get it done. And I know another thing, thank you again for that, Reclaiming Life, because another thing is you can just say to your coworkers, look, I am working on improving my memory. And what I would like you to do is I'm going to dedicate time to this tomorrow at 10 a.m. and it'll probably be done by 11, but I would really appreciate if you would hold me accountable to that. I'm going to set a reminder. If you wouldn't mind setting a reminder, checking up on me around 11:30 to make sure that it's on board, that would be awesome. That is very, very professional because you're sharing, your vulnerability, and you are creating a plan for how you're going to not let that vulnerability get in the way of you being a professional and getting the work done. So that's really, really important. Let's see here. A person with no name says, how do I memorize things like geometry and algebra? And there's typical things I forget in seconds, like the name of a city. That's how bad my memory is. Okay, so, well, here we have an opportunity to make memorizing the names of cities trivial compared to geometry and algebra. So one of the things that you want to do is create a solid memory palace network. Make sure you understand the role of magnetic imagery in a memory palace network and dive in, start getting it done, because that is just interesting information that you'll have so much fun with when you look at it correctly and start to encode it consistently in a dedicated memory improvement lifelong practice. So great question. Let's see. Samantha says, I am frustrated by my lack of concentration. I used to have amazing focus and speed, but that died when I got sick 9 years ago. My IQ is almost back, but I find brain fog a huge issue, especially if I haven't slept well or talked with too many people in a day, which is adrenal fatigue. PTSD is high, so chronic fatigue is a huge issue. Well, and there's some more details here. Well, I mean, in cases that have a medical situation, seeing a doctor is always advised. There may be a number of things going on there. Brain fog, I would look at diet for sure. Diet is absolutely one of the biggest levers that a lot of people are not attending to enough. If you didn't catch the last live stream, we read the chapter of the new book on diet in draft. So give that a try, and you'll have a lot of benefit from that, to be sure. Let's see. Reclaiming Life says, sounds like someone for whom the self-improvement supercharger would help. Yeah, that's quite possible. Thanks for suggesting that. Self-improvement supercharger is a program you can get if you want, and it's best used in combination with the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. So if you have the Masterclass and you do not have the supercharger but would like to add that, let me know. A lot of people have been emailing also about the Memory Dojo and trying to find it. That is available to you if you have the Masterclass and the Mastermind. So if you tick those boxes and you still haven't found the dojo, reach out and I'll show you how to get into that two-path option for training, additional training. And if not, then, well, get started with the masterclass and see what this world is all about. And we'll really enjoy making sure that you are covered so that the dojo is meaningful for you. Julie says, nice looking live stream. Wow, yeah, we've got some hot lights on and some outer space movement here. Really starting to think about the year to come for what we're going to do with the YouTube channel and doing some studies in how the videos that we are doing perform, basically, and improving. Just like you need to start with your existing competence to create goals that you're actually going to achieve in memory, likewise with YouTube channels. So looking forward to enacting some changes and seeing if people respond to them, and doing it in a way that is not purely cosmetic, because those little phantom optimizations, or micro optimizations better said, can lead to some phantom wins that don't actually help anybody. So we want to always make sure that we are helping people substantially. And if you have any ideas about what you would like to see on this channel in the future, go ahead and type them in the chat now, or if you're watching the replay, type them in the discussion box, because this is for you ultimately, and we will answer you on the basis of the truth. So let me know if you have suggestions, and your silence is its own suggestion. So don't leave things quiet while you have the guy on the horn. If something is on your mind and you want to say it, now is the chance. We all know the classroom effect, where the teacher says, hey, anybody have any questions? And nobody raises their hand, even though all of them do. And that's a sad thing indeed. So if that's happening to you, then please use this opportunity. Physico asks, how to multitask effectively? There's a couple of ways to answer that. It's a good question. And here's why it's a good question. Multitasking can be done, actually. The question is, can it be done well? And in which context is it done well? And there is a way that you can do multitasking very well. It's called using a memory palace. Why is memory palace multitasking? Well, let's just imagine a very simple example, which is memorizing a deck of cards. Well, if you're using a memory palace, which most people will be doing, even though they're doing it very fast, then you're using multiple sensory modes at the same time, including spatial memory, to memorize all these cards very quickly. Or when I'm memorizing names in a room, or you're memorizing names in a room, you are multitasking. I remember this guy Thomas, he had given this speech at a talk where I was memorizing everybody's names, and he said that multitasking was really, really bad and so forth. And I did my little demonstration, and I said, you know, Thomas, it's not exactly true that you can't multitask, because I just multitasked heavily while memorizing all of your guys' names. And I put in about 7 levels of technique all at the same time in one swift movement because of multitasking. So you can multitask. But at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to define the different activities that you want to multitask and essentially still segment them so that you're doing a stress release kind of activity. So years ago, when I was writing multiple essays at the same time, I would be like sometimes as little as 5 minutes on an individual essay, and then I'd jump to the next essay, and then I'd read a book for 15 minutes or whatever, and then go back to the essay, or work on my novel for 10 minutes and go back to the essay. It's like stress release, stress release. But in that time, the focus is totally on the thing. So it's multitasking and it's not multitasking, but it's more like stress and release, stress and release. Think of it that way. And then you can really do a number of things across the course of a day. And one of the things that's been really helpful in aligning myself to that is the Mastery Journal, because it gives you this way of documenting 4 missions, and you can leap between them and actually track your time while you're doing it in a very convenient way. All right. So, let's see. Reclaiming Life says, any news on a call in podcast or live stream, which you mentioned wanting to do several times before? Yes. Still looking for a technology to do that works, and I'll need a call screener. So that may be coming. And we have a few calls that end up ultimately being something that will go into the mastermind, I think. So there'll be some things. I'm trying to reach out to a few people, but they often, they're shy, or they for whatever reason would prefer to keep the calls private, which is totally fine. But in terms of the call-in show, yeah, we still need to find the right technology, which I think I've found. But then I need a call screener so that I can actually be live with you guys and be sure that whoever we take on is a serious person. That is, we try to minimize the trolling that is sure to come when you do that kind of thing. And so, yeah, that's still in process and in progress, and I'm really looking forward to it. Christian is here. Good day from Christian's body. Excellent, excellent. The unit has arrived. The unit Christian. Well, welcome and hello from Unit Anthony. The unit is speaking. For those of you who don't know, read the Atmabodha and the Ribhu Gita and the like, and you shall. Let's see. Shander is here. Hello, Anthony just joined. Don't know if you talked about it. Do you have any tips to study law? I use memory palaces, but any other technique in specific to remember subsections and clauses, etc.? Yeah, great question, Shander. Thanks for saying hello. First of all, don't consider this information as being significantly different from any other information. We do a great disservice to ourselves and to information when we think that there's something special about this or that topic, this or that language, this or that area of interest, this or that niche. The philosopher Lyotard, he always said that genre is a way of making ourselves feel safe. And this is very, very true. We try to distinguish topics as if there's something unique or special to it to make ourselves feel safe and special, and to make that topic feel special and unique, when really it's just information. It's information just like any other information that needs to weave with you, that needs to be encoded deep inside your chemical networks. And so the more that you think of it as being unique or special, the more distance you create and the more attachment you create to that distance. So that's my first tip for you, is it's information first. And then you look at the law and say, what's special or unique about the law that we can turn into a memory tool, right? And so you know that you have, for example, key terms and then, or key clauses or whatever the case may be, and then subsections. So now you're going to think about, okay, so what is the governing information? How can I create a memory palace or a memory palace network that helps me organize the governing information? And then how can I use the memory palace and my memory palace network and perhaps use the major to help me numerically order information inside of them according to subclause? And then you start to memorize the subclause. So you start with the governing structure, then you work with the subclauses. It's very, very simple. And if you have access to the Mastermind video from November 2018, you'll see something that Adolfo instantly modified in a way that I hadn't anticipated that would help you use the same memory palace to actually divide it by corner versus wall, and then you can proceed from there. It's really quite good. So one of the great things about being in the mastermind is you see the ideas that I'm working with, and then you see how some of the top player students instantly modify it to other approaches, other ways of thinking about it, rotate it in your mind so you use it better and use it faster that way. So that MMMV cube, it's called, would help you a great deal. But first you got to sort out your strategy and your plan and have a healthy approach to the nature of the information. Hope that helps you out. And if you don't have the free course, please grab it now at magneticmarymethod.com/YT. And Rudra is here. Just came here. Please sum up what happened till now. The best way to sum up what happened till now is to watch the replay after it has been rendered, because we've gone through a lot of stuff. Really, really important to do that. Physico says, what's the model for a mastery journal that you do? I do in a stream of free consciousness way. Can you help with systematizing it? Yes, Physico, we shared a link earlier in the chat here, and you can read that material about the Freedom Journal for some ideas. Then the rest of the training is in the masterclass. But there you go. And you can watch the replay as well. I showed a bit inside the Mastery Journal previously. In terms of the model, I would highly recommend that you just get one. It's worth every penny. Even if pennies are slim, save up, because it'll completely change your life. Reclaiming Life says to Shander, for subsections in the law, the major method will help to remember the specific references when used with a memory palace. Exactly, yeah. And Shander too, I don't know I've never done it, so I don't know, but the extent to which a memory or a mind map would help is worth exploring one way or the other. I'm deeply interested in the law, by the way, and have been consuming a number of videos. I sometimes think about going to get a law degree when I'm not thinking about going to become a neuroscientist, which is like a little tension in my life. Why, as a person with a PhD and 2 MAs, I would go back to university again is just one of those adventures in life that I may take and enjoy taking, but we'll see about that. But if I had, it would be a hard choice between linguistics, the law, particularly criminal law, I think, contract law or criminal law, maybe entertainment law. Anyway, and neuroscience. Maybe there's a way to do them all. The linguistics of legal neuroscience. That'd be something, wouldn't it? All right, Amanda writes, what's the I can understand German quite well, but I still struggle with reading and writing. I'd like to be able to read articles and books with more ease. Great. Well, one of the things to do is to use the big 5. Reclaiming Life says PhD, JD, MD, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Just stack them, rack them and stack them. The laurels. The laurels indeed. Okay, so to Amanda's question, struggling with reading and writing, if you want to read articles and books auf Deutsch, then the way to do it is just to get started. I don't have it here, but I was really interesting that my Hiwi, I was just thinking I need a new book in German to read, and my Hiwi sent me his new book. So that's cool. And, you know, if I was you, if you were me and then you were in that situation, the thing to do would be to go read his book and send him an email auf Deutsch. So his new book is called Fragen und Antworten mit allem Wissen Werten zu Stanley Kubrick's Odyssey im Weltraum, which basically means the questions and answers with all the worthy knowledge about Stanley Kubrick's Space Odyssey 2001, which is really, really great. He's been working on that movie for years in his research, and really great to have received a copy of that book. Thank you, Nils. Hiwi means research assistant, basically. Really great. Shander says, thank you for the suggestions, Anthony, in Reclaiming Life. I'm studying my studies in corporate law shortly. Excellent. That's great. Thanks for letting us know that. Physico says, thank you, Dr. Metivier and Maricella and Reclaiming Life and all the other people. Talking with chill people is a blessing for my soul. Well, thank you for saying that. Really, really appreciate that. Physico, always good to see you. Reclaiming Life says, all these short story series has a German version, so depending on their level, that may be more on par. Indeed, yeah, Ollie sent me his book. It's not in this room, but really great. I like the stories in there. A lot of fun. And, you know, something like this is, you know, you don't have to sit here and hard memorize every word in order, but it just gives you these little wonderful ideas. And one of the traps in this is that a lot of Germans will not know these words, so I often pull them out and they are just like, huh? But that's all part of the adventure. Todolinski. Du tornst mich irgendwie echt an, aber Todolinski. Okay, well, we won't translate that one. Waffenfuzis. Great. That's for police. Die Waffenfuzis. Nice. Interesting. Waffenfuzis. Maricella says, a comment in relation to my Memory Palace's STC library. I'm doing a few drawings and relate it with numbers. It has location, library, image view, and action, air, birds. An idea, please let me know. Great. Please post those drawings and more detailed question in our group so that I can respond there. I need to see what you're doing. That would be great. So if you're able to do that, that'd be awesome. And there's the accountability post in the group for you, if you didn't see it, that you could use to help organize it for this week. And then if we have the drawings and a more detailed question, we can catch up with it in the dojo this week, which would be awesome. Kaladur is here. Hello, I need some help to nail some certification exam like cybersecurity, AWS. Is that AWS is in Amazon Web Services? If so, awesome. We use that. In the magnetic memory method world, please, Kaladur, specific question. If you need support in that, one of the best things to do, if you haven't already, is to take the free training and give it your best due diligence so that you're able to understand what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and then come with specific questions so that we can answer on the basis of specific questions. Just getting that link for you now so that you can zip right on over there. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-ay, my oh my, what a wonderful day. And that way you have the training. So that's there for you, my friend, and enjoy it. Yes, I will, William, I will. Vorsicht, Vorsicht. Aber ich glaube, gibt's nicht so viele Leute, das verstehen würde. Also, all right, let's see. Let's pop in any questions that you may have. Let's see if we can do a little bit of more mailbag here. Do you enjoy mailbag? Let me know in the chat or in the replay comments if you like. Boom, 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 boom. Let's see here. All right. So many emails. So this is from Noor, who says, oh, Physico I think is gone, but this is in the physical field of things. Noor is bored with information and wants to get over boring, and also wants to know if memory palaces can help me learn texts as long as the Bible. Well, yes, they can. They can. However, here's the thing with memorizing the entire Bible that I often say to the private students that I have that work on this. I say, what is going to get you closer to God? Is it memorizing the entire Bible? Or is it memorizing just one new piece of it at a time? And so, yes, you can memorize the entire Bible, but you're going to memorize it one piece at a time, one bit of information at a time. And so one of the things you might do that I think is very, very good to do is segment it and think about like the 20% of the Bible that is most likely to be the stuff that gets you closer to your Creator and the reason why you would want something like the Bible in your head. And even if you go on to memorize the entire Bible, which would be fine, the way that you would get the furthest, the fastest, with the greatest amount of accomplishment would be to memorize the highest order possible material. So like the Proverbs, perhaps, is going to do a lot more for you, or the Psalms is going to do a lot more for you, perhaps, than endless long lists of names, right? And then you might want to even think too, like, would it be the actual stories of the Bible, word for word, that's going to do the deal? Or is it maybe understanding them more structurally and thinking about some of the bigger details than any sort of verbatim memorization of it? And even if you did the verbatim memorization of the stories, would it make sense to maybe just abstract the point, and think about this? Reclaiming Life says, Noah Webster memorized the entire Bible, but it takes more time to memorize than the Quran does because of the poetic flow. Yeah, well, I imagine the Bible would take longer than the Quran, period, even with or without the poetic flow. But at the end of the day, I mean, one of the great services that Gary Weber does in Evolving Beyond Thought is he just extracts the most useful stuff from the Ribhu Gita and just memorize that, right? And even in the Upadesa Saram, like, you wouldn't need to memorize the whole thing necessarily. It's not that long. But there's some things in there I just think, it's not really particularly useful to memorize. So am I going to memorize it or not? I haven't decided. But in what I've memorized so far, I got to a part and I was like, why would I want that line in my head? So I could just skip it, right? But if you're a completist, no problem. Yes, to answer your question, Noor, you can learn texts as long as the Bible, but be really, really certain that you actually want to do that. And we just had a comment on the YouTube channel where, and this is for a video that we had called the Memorize a Book Dare. And this person, Jordan, says, I also don't understand the point of memorizing an entire book word for word. And I really just challenge that whole idea of memorizing books word for word. You certainly can. I'm doing something like this with the Atma Bodha, but not word for word, because I just this morning recited to you from memory the basic meaning of the second passage, and then I went and looked at it, and I didn't do it word for word, but I got it exactly what it says there, and it works. What would be the benefit of having it word for word in this particular case? There is none. Arguably, though, if I memorized the Sanskrit of this, then there would be benefit of doing it word for word. I just haven't found the Sanskrit for this yet, but I'm looking for it. And then that's what I would memorize. Because there's an argument, it's a compelling one, I'm not sure I believe it, but that argument is that the Sanskrit has been so fine-tuned phonically by these people that it may actually, through the way the mouth contacts the tongue and the mouth and the teeth and all that stuff, perhaps have some resonance in the brain. I'm not sure. I'd love to have the budget to do the brain scans for that. It certainly feels that way sometimes. But I'm not a man prone to woo-woo, and I try to avoid it as much as I can and not be part of creating woo-woo. So that is left to the realm of the fantastical, and I enjoy it for its fantasticalness, and shall continue to do so until that we have the budgets to analyze the brain. Although there is some interesting brain analysis already, and there's a lot to this idea, and we know from the way the major was constructed in the memory world that there's some logic to, why one is T and D just by the shapes of the mouth that may have some memory advantage to it, but we don't have the budgets to do the studies that would enable us to make the claim. So we don't make the claim, not making it now, but enjoying the fantastical, because the fantastical is enjoyable. All right, reclaiming. It says memorize the Cliff's Notes. Indeed, yeah. I mean, it's a pick your battles sort of thing. Take it case by case. Sometimes there are quotes that are well worth mentioning, word for word. So X Bluebell says, Soft-Wired, how the new science of brain plasticity can change your life. Love for you to interview the author, Dr. Mertznik. Not sure if that's Mertznish or Mertznik. Let me put that on the speed of implementation list. Just ordered 2 books from the speed of implementation list. Maybe we'll order some more. This is the Brain HQ guy. Not sure I'm so pleased with Brain HQ, but I appreciate the suggestion. Definitely the brain is plastic, or plasticitous. You can use neuroplasticity to your effect. I just don't know that putting it to the test with software is a really a good choice. But speaking of interviews, thank you for that suggestion. I really appreciate it. We interviewed the authors of The Wise Advocate last week, so that's coming up soon. That's a book that's not available yet, but I think you can pre-order it. Let's see. I've read it, and I highly recommend The Wise Advocate. And if you can pre-order it, I'm sure that Josie Thompson and Jeffrey Schwartz and Art Kleiner would appreciate that very much. And it's all about neuroplasticity, and absolutely amazing book. So yeah, Art Kleiner, Jeffrey Schwartz, and Josie Thompson available for pre-order. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to share this link with you, and get it now. There you go. And the interview is going to come out maybe next week or the week after. I think you'll really enjoy it. So let's see. I guess that's it, guys. I really appreciate all the time that we were able to spend today. And as always, you can post any follow-up questions, suggestions, thoughts, rhymes, or reasons, or otherwise on this replay. We'll leave this replay for perpetuity's sake. If you don't have the free course, please do sign up for that at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. The link is in the description. It's in the area in our chat stream here multiple times. James says, I enjoy these Sunday get-togethers. We enjoy having you, James. Thanks for being here. Thanks to Edgar the Elephant, as always, for showing up from time to time, his little cameos. Oh, no problem, man. And no thanks to the evil Dr. Forget and his evil ways. I'll be back. I'm sure you will, evil Dr. Forget. Thank you, Reclaiming Life, for being here, for all your support of this initiative and your wonderful suggestions, and for supplementing the knowledge coming through this unit to yours, and for all of the units here who know what we're talking about, like Christian, for this unit talk. May the great being and the great oneness inside be good to your unit, and always getting better as you continue to feed the unified field with those things that you are called to give it. Thank you, X Bluebells. And Christian says thanks to Edgar, and boo to forget. Yes, boo indeed. A big old melting boo. And we can indeed melt for forgetfulness. And the more that we do, the more that we will have an amazing time with our memory, which is exactly what we are. We are our memory. San says, thanks from Toronto. Oh, whereabouts in Toronto are you? I used to live in East York in Toronto. Love East York. And if I ever moved back, I'd probably move to East York again, because it's such a wonderful hood. Where else would I live in Toronto? No, it would be East York. And probably just north of Coxwell, maybe north of Woodbine. Not sure exactly. But I love Toronto. Anyway, many of my memory palaces are in East York, Isan, and on the York University campus and the University of Toronto campus, and places like Queen Video. Queen Video on Queen Street, I heard, is closed, but what a memory palace. Bloor Street might still be open, and there was one on College Street in Little Italy. I don't know if it's still there. Don't know what Howie's up to, but whenever I go to Toronto, I always try to get in there. Mississauga. Good old Mississauga. I haven't been there for a long time, but I have certainly been there. And I like Mississauga. Indeed. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for being here today. Until we have a chance to speak again, as I always like to say, come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.